Hey, how are ya?
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We're doing it again.
Well, what are you drinking today?
I have coffee, and in my coffee, I put some rum chata.
Nice.
Have you had rum chata?
I mean, it's been a while, but I've had rum chata.
So, can I tell you, I married one of the children of the creators of rum chata.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Was there
pr-
rum chata like all over the
everywhere,
wedding? Everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah, but it was awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
I always joke that I am a D-list celebrity wedding planner because I am, and like that's one of my D-list celebrity clients. So cheers to rum chata.
Cheers to rum chata. Sponsored by rum chata.
Yeah.
If you are listening, we'll take your rum chata sponsorship.
Okay, what are you drinking?
I am drinking, I was going to say a mimosa. It's not a mimosa. I'm not that fancy.
Is it just vodka on the rocks?
Orange juice and vodka. Screwdriver.
A
That's what that is.
screwdriver.
But I put it in a red wine glass. I looked at the white wine glass and I thought, that's too small.
Yeah.
So I used the red wine glass.
A screwdriver. Gross. I don't think I've had a screwdriver since we were hanging out in college. So good to know that some things don't change.
I had a bottle of white wine opened in the fridge and I was like, what if I mixed white wine in orange juice? Because it's kind of like a mimosa. And then I thought to myself, that seems very trashy.
Yeah.
So I poured some Tito's in the orange juice.
So you went with the screwdriver. I went with the rum chata because I was like, I think every episode I'm just going to be drinking white wine. And I'm like, I want people to know that I have a diversity when it comes to my selection of morning beverages, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why that mattered to me. I didn't want to be pigeonholed. Well, I am very excited about what we're talking about today because it's essentially a little bit of complaining. As much as I love to talk about how great weddings are, I also like to complain about them.
Well, everybody has some annoyances on the day of the wedding. All vendors do. And so I think it's okay.
So today we're going to talk about a few of our pet peeves. So a pet peeve is essentially something that annoys the crap out of you that maybe doesn't annoy everybody.
Right.
And I think it's fair, anytime you talk about a wedding pet peeve, of course we can rationalize why it's happening. But we don't really want to do that. We will a little bit because we have to, show everybody that we're fair and balanced.
That we're not dead inside.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, some things really annoy the crap out of us. And then, our plan here is that anytime we have a guest on, we'll start out by asking them what their wedding pet peeves are.
And I'm very curious to hear what everybody has to say because we're not just going to bring planners on. We plan to have other types of wedding vendors on here as well. And so it'll be interesting. Maybe somebody will say that the wedding planner is their pet peeve.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they will.
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
And eventually maybe we'll have travel pet peeves that we can talk about on an episode because there's plenty of those.
There are. Yes. I hope that you can edit out all the jingling of your ice cubes.
I was just going to say that. I'm like, I don't know if I should have put ice in here because it's click, click, click. But will know when I'm taking a sip.
I want to keep every jingle in this episode. It's like when my grandma told me she was, she quit smoking and then we'd be on the phone with her and you could hear her inhaling, and you're like, so please, I want to keep the jingle in.
You can play a drinking game with us. Every time you hear the jingle of my ice cubes in my glass, you have to take a drink.
Yes, perfect. I'm in. Committed to this game. So, okay, Megan, why don't you kick us off here? Why don't you throw us one of your pet peeves?
Okay, so I have a guest pet peeve. And actually, I was making some notes, and all of my pet peeves today are about wedding guests. I'm going to stick with the theme here. And it was so funny when I was thinking about these pet peeves and wedding guests because I don't know if you've ever seen the meme online of David from Schitt's Creek where they say something about like, oh, I try to keep a straight face, but this is what I look like. And his
Yes.
emotions are written all over his face. That
Yes.
is me on the day of the wedding when I am dealing with wedding guests and I realize I'm doing it, but all of my energy is focused into making sure that my bride and groom and their family are getting what they want, that when a guest comes and does something stupid,
I
it's
know.
hard. It's hard for me to keep myself in check. So I'm going to talk about some things that guests do that really annoy the crap out of me. And maybe if you're listening and you are a wedding guest, you will know not to do this the next time you go to a wedding. At least if I'm there.
Yeah, yeah. No, they'll take notes and then do it.
And then do it on purpose. Okay, so my first pet peeve is when wedding guests try to break in, and I will say break into the ballroom or wherever we are setting up dinner before we are ready for them.
Yes.
Usually we can close doors. We try to keep it private. Over the course of the last 10 years, it has really become a thing for this room reveal, right? We flip the room or nobody has been in the room because cocktails are in a different space. And we want to keep it private so that the bride and groom can come in and see the room before anybody else comes in.
And we need those photographers to get in there and take photos because those beautiful, did everybody hear that? Take a drink. I just heard the ice clink. But we need pictures of the room. So it's
Right.
also like getting those done too.
And the photographer and videographer, they're on us to keep this room nice for them to get a room shot because ultimately, if they don't get what they need, the couple's not going to be happy with them. So we need to keep the room free of guests. And if somebody tells you not to come in, there's no reason why you need to come in. I have had guests where we have certain doors locked. At a hotel where there's multiple doors to get into the ballroom?
Yeah.
We have the main doors locked. People, you can hear them jiggling the door. And if one's locked, they'll try another door. And all of a sudden we see somebody peek in because they find one that's open, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, they're breaking in. And so
Right.
we politely go over. They try to explain themselves. I'm Aunt Sally. I just want to put my purse down. It's like, Aunt Sally, I don't care.
Right.
If you are not the bride or groom or their parents, you cannot come in here and you can hang on to your purse for a few more minutes. Ultimately, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, people. It's just about you being nosy and wanting to come in. You don't need to come in.
Well, and like we have set you up. We have set you up in another space with a full bar, lots of food. Hell,
Yes.
we even put the couple in there for you. Like they're in there. They are in there walking around.
Yes.
So that's where you need to be. Why do you think that if the bride and groom aren't in this room right now, that you get to be?
Right.
Yes.
And many times, if you need a seat, if you're an elderly person and you need somewhere to sit, we typically have thought of places
Always.
that you can sit. I'd be happy to show you those places. I would be happy to hunt down in another room a chair if you don't have one for you to sit in.
Yes.
I know it seems trivial to people who maybe have not experienced planning one of these higher level weddings that, oh, well, why can't we just come in?
Right.
It doesn't matter if you understand it or not, or you think it's silly or not. It's not your day.
Well, and we were talking about this before. A flip is, again, where we are taking the ceremony, it's set up as a ceremony room. It's then flipped into the reception space. And even the story you shared on a past episode of the curtains coming down on the tables. Like, we're kind of being bitches right now, but we're trying to create magic. We are literally trying to create magic. We joke about it, but it takes time and it is a stressful part of the day for us.
It's one of the most stressful. Yeah, for sure.
It is. So it's like when you're just peeking your head in to put your purse down, we just had to change 3 tablecloths on 3 fully set tables because ice was melting all over them and we want the picture to be perfect.
Right.
So It's not like we're being crabby asses just to be crabby asses. There's a reason. If a planner's being a crabby ass to you, there's a reason and we don't have time to tell you the reason.
Right. And the bride and groom have probably specifically told us they don't want anybody coming in. And that is our boss on the day of the wedding.
Totally.
So that's my first one.
I like that one.
I'm getting really worked up here. All right.
I know. All right. I'm like cracking my knuckles. All right. My first pet peeve starts early on in the planning. It's usually, actually, it's sometimes even before they've hired me. It's on the consultation call. And it does annoy the crap out of me, but I get it. Again, I understand. But it drives me crazy when I'm talking to a couple and they say to me, we want 250 people on a Saturday in the summer in downtown Chicago. And I tell them what that's going to cost them.
Mhm.
And then they say, well, we just want something casual. And I'm like, okay, it's still going to be the same amount of money. I get it. You know, you go casual in your head. You're like, oh, well, when I throw a casual party at home and I have pizza boxes out and I tell people just to grab a plate and help themselves, the 5 people I've invited over,
Right.
totally cheap. You're hosting 250 people, not just a dinner, but 6 hours of
Right.
watering and feeding these people. Sure, it can be as casual as you want, but like it's still expensive.
And the venues, when they are pricing out their minimums or their rental rates, they don't send us a sheet and say, well, this is the price if you're throwing a high-end wedding, and this is the price if you're throwing a casual wedding.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like,
Yeah.
you have to pay the same amount of money.
Yeah, you're in luck. You're in luck. We're throwing a casual wedding special. So I understand where it's coming from, but I'll just tell anyone listening right now, you don't want anything casual. You say that, but there's nothing casual about hosting 250 people. I don't care if we're doing barbecue. That's
Right.
that's not casual. Like
right.
This
Yeah,
is
that's
this
very
is
true.
this is a production, and it's still going to cost money. So maybe you save $2 per person. It's not going to save you money. Even the whole buffet versus plated argument. It's the same price, if not more, to do a buffet sometimes,
Right.
because we have to have enough food. So I get where it's coming from. Just stop though. Just stop. It's okay. Just don't just say, wow, that's a lot of money.
Right. Well, it's downtown Chicago or downtown Milwaukee. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Anything is going to be expensive. Never having a drink with us again. Live and learn.
So that's my first pet peeve.
Okay. All right.
So let's hear the next thing that annoys you about guests.
Yeah. So the next thing that annoys me about guests is right after Aunt Sally has peeked her head into the ballroom, we get everything ready. We open the doors. Everybody comes in. And at 95% of my weddings, it is necessary for us to close the bar for a very short amount of time.
You got to close the bar. I always say I can't compete with the bar.
You can't compete with the bar. So we have to close the bar for a couple different reasons. We have to close the bar mostly, though, to get people to move into the main room for dinner. Like we always say, this is a production. And while things are fluid on the day of the wedding, there is a certain time schedule in place. And a lot of that at this point in the evening is us sticking to the timeline so that we can get your meals out promptly and hot, right?
Yes.
Hot. So we need people to move into the ballroom. The people who move in quickly, great, they sit down. They don't want to wait for 45 minutes for everybody else to finish up at the bar to come in. That's annoying. So we close the bar. Many times the bar will help the last few people get drinks, but we close the bar and move everybody into the main room.
Yes.
My pet peeve is when people complain about the bar being closed.
Yes.
I understand. We live in Wisconsin. Everybody wants to keep drinking all night. But you can't tell me that you cannot survive for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, without a drink. And many times there might be champagne on the table. We might be doing a wine pour. We just need to close the bar so that you sit, so that you listen to the toast and act respectful of what this couple has planned. I don't need you complaining that you can't get another Miller Lite for 45 minutes. You will survive. You will survive.
Right. Yes. I always want to say because I run a pretty tight ship. So when I'm working with the caterers before the wedding, when we're finalizing timeline, I'm like, hard close at 6:30. Hard close. I don't care how long the line is. And then, of course, the bartenders are so nice and they'll keep going. And then I walk over and I'm given the nope, we're done. What is this? What is this? Nobody can see me do this. What is this called? Cut it.
Slicing her neck.
I'm slicing my neck. Yes, exactly. And, and then, people are like, well, can't I just get one more? And it's like, I haven't had a drink since last night. If I'm okay, you're going to be okay for 20 minutes. Right. And to your point, there's booze at the table.
Yeah. Nobody would sit down. I had a wedding one time at a hotel, and I had never worked at this hotel before. It was a coordination client, and we can have a whole episode of why we prefer full planning versus coordination. But, we
Mhm.
do the best we can with 6-week coordination and getting to know everything. But I just assumed that when we talked about the cocktail hour being over, I believe they were on the roof or something, somewhere up high. They had to come all downstairs to go into the ballroom. I assumed that bar would just close, right? Because everybody has to move a couple floors down into the
Mhm.
ballroom. So I didn't ask. I should have asked.
Never assume.
I
It,
know.
it makes
Freaking
an
A.
ass out of you and me.
I like to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. However, this was dumb. So people were coming down off the elevator, and all of a sudden I look, they had opened a bar outside the ballroom downstairs. So people were coming downstairs and then just going to that bar, and nobody was going into the main room. And this was a couple, they had an East Coast style where they dance to start before dinner. So they are paying this band to be playing, and they want everybody to come in and be excited, and nobody is coming in because they're all at the bar. And I went up and I did. I was like, you have to close this bar. I thought this was just common sense,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then a ton of people were pissed because they couldn't get a drink. And I'm like, you're going to survive. Trust me. Yeah.
Right. And when you were just saying that, I'm like, oh, should I change one of my pet peeves to East Coast style?
Oh, I love East Coast style.
Oh, God.
We could have a Jen versus Megan.
That's our first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. I'm going to say one more thing about the bar. Weddings are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to one of these weddings that Jen and I plan, they are extremely expensive events. It costs thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to host an open bar for 200 people. And sometimes a couple may choose to keep the bar closed an extra 30 minutes to save a little bit of money so that they can maybe do a late night snack for guests later. Not everybody has an unlimited budget, or maybe they do and they just don't want to spend it. But when you come in and you act rude about a choice that a couple has made on the day of the wedding, that is rude. It is very rude as a guest.
I'll add too that a lot of times we're closing the bar during that half hour because we want to keep it open a little bit later for you. Wouldn't you rather get a beer at 11:30?
Nobody needs a beer at 11:30, Jen.
Well, I know, it's true. The other point based off of that, though, is if we're looking at a 6-hour event, most of my events are 6 to 6.5 hours long from like ceremony to conclusion. We're talking about a full bar being open for probably 5.5 of those hours. Also, the couple is signing a contract with the caterer, the venue, that once people are overserved, you're not getting served anymore.
Mhm.
So it is also a thought of like, people, this is a marathon, not a sprint. They want you to stay and enjoy and maybe remember the wedding. I don't know. Call me crazy.
Maybe if you're the one who can't live without that extra drink for 30 minutes, maybe you're the reason why they chose to close it an extra 30
Yikes.
minutes.
Now I'm doing that thing where you pull your collar out like, yikes. I'm just going to always explain what hand gestures I'm using while we're on this. So I've complained about my couples and now I'm going to complain about vendors. One of my pet peeves with vendors, I think I've made this word up, vendor-splaining. So have you heard of mansplaining?
Of course.
Okay, so that's like when a woman says something and then a man just repeats the exact same thing back to her. And you're like, yeah, no shit. That's like literally what I just said. Vendor-splaining, I think, is a titch different. I use it when it's like, I've been doing this for 14 years. I'm working with a new photographer. I send over the preliminary timeline. Now, here's what I'll say. No matter how long I've done this and continue to do this, I always send my preliminary timeline to the photographer, to the caterer, just to say like, hey, are you good with this flow?
Yep.
I've put hundreds and hundreds of these together, but you might work differently.
Exactly.
So you send that preliminary timeline to the photographer and you hop on a call and then they start to tell me how a wedding day flows. Right? Well, and then they're going to do a first look, which is them seeing each other before I'm not kidding. There's like usually blood in my mouth when I am on these calls because I'm just like, they're just doing their due diligence. They're just maybe proving to me that they know what they're doing. Or if the couple's on the call, maybe they're just trying to prove to the couple that they know what they're doing, but like literal blood in my mouth because I just want to be like, no shit.
It's the most annoying when the couple is on the call because then it makes it sound like they're explaining it to us.
Totally. Like, what is happening here? I have gotten to the point with my clients. I'm so selective about who I work with that we have a really good rapport, obviously, while we're working together.
Right.
Where I'll get off that call and text the couple and be like, just so you know, I know what a first look is. They're like, LOL, right?
Right.
I don't think they would have hired me if I didn't know how this worked. So that's one example of vendor splaining. The other is when we're on the day of, and for example, the videographer comes up to me and asks me what's happening next because, of course, they didn't look at my timeline.
Oh.
So I go through, I mean, can you hear Megan? Like, that was guttural.
If I wasn't so focused on guests, that would be so up there because we take so much time putting together all of this stuff and getting it to people well in advance of the wedding. If you cannot do me the courtesy of looking at a timeline or refresh your memory before you walk in, at least.
Totally. I am going to put this out there right now that when we've been doing this podcast for like 500 episodes, I bet you 70% of the vendor pet peeves when we have planners on, I bet that's what they say. I mean, it drives every planner crazy.
Right. And I don't expect them to know everything. And that's my job, to answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions. But if it's obvious that you do not know anything that's supposed to be happening, that's annoying.
It is annoying. And I think we could do a whole episode on that because I have a theory about that. But anyways.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, we'll save it.
Yeah. Ooh, maybe that's like a cliffhanger now. So anyways, videographer asked me essentially, what happens today? You know, and I go and I go through everything, and then they go into the room with the bride and the bridesmaids and are like, all right, here's what I just learned is going to happen. And I have never, ever needed to be the star of the show. I don't plan that way. I do consider myself the team captain. I do say that. But I'm like, fine, it's whatever. If you need to be the star of the show, it's fine. But it drives me crazy. I'm like, come on.
I always take it as it's kind of insulting. Like, you couldn't do me the common courtesy as to look at this before you came in here today.
Yeah, it's a lot. So vendor splaining really grinds my gears, if you will. Is grind my gears a saying for mad?
It sounds like it could be.
Yeah, let's keep that in there. I like that. Back to guests. Yeah, Megan wants to do weddings where no guests are invited.
I only do courthouse weddings.
Yeah, elopement specials.
To sandals.
Yeah.
Because that brings in my travel business. Oh man, Jen, you're onto something here.
I am.
I love my couples so much, and the guests annoy me so much. Why is that? Until then, the guests become my clients, and then I'm like, and now you're amazing, and I hate everybody else.
Yes, exactly. One of the things that I think is really fun to watch with your couples is when they realize, you know, when they're waiting for RSVPs to come in and they're like, what the hell? Why can't these people just tell us? And then they're like, oh yeah, we used to be that way, you know? And you're like, well, yeah, you used to be a guest and they're the worst.
They're the worst.
Okay.
Okay, so my last one. So now we have gotten people in. They have realized they're not going to get their drink. Maybe that's why they're so irritable with this next pet peeve of mine. It is when guests come into the room and try to move their seat. Oof. Okay. Yeah. Why?
Do you know how long it took that couple to decide that you were going to be at table 5?
Right.
Hours.
First of all, I have had weddings, a couple, where guests come up to me and act like it's my fault of where they're sitting.
There must be some mistake. There must be some mistake.
Right. There must be some mistake. It's like, okay, Becky, I didn't make the floor plan because I don't know who you are. So I didn't do this. So now you are messing with what this couple has spent hours, probably days, stressing. Yep. Sometimes arguing with family about where people should sit. I have the attitude of, these are adults. If you cannot sit at a table with these other people for maybe an hour and have a meal, like, what is wrong with you?
Right.
It's a pet peeve because that is also a very stressful time. We are trying to do a lot of things. We have taken an hour and a half to set these tables perfectly right. The catering team has already come around. We've done chair counts. They have the meal orders well in advance so that they know how many chickens are at table 3. And
Mhm.
you, just because you don't feel like sitting next to your Uncle Ted tonight, want to move to another table, messes all of that up and delays dinner. You think it's something small, it's not.
Yeah,
And it's annoying.
it is. I agree.
I've told people no, that we can't move them. I probably gave them my David face, right? And then they try to sneak. They do it
Yes,
anyway.
they do.
So then that
Yeah.
guest is on my shit list and I've got my eye on them.
Sometimes the
Mhm.
things that come out of my mouth at first, I'm like, oops. It's not bad. But for example, my wedding a couple weekends ago, we did food trucks and it was all finger food, sandwiches, lobster rolls, things of that nature.
Mhm.
And so we purposely didn't have the caterer bring a dinner fork. So we just had the salad fork and no dinner fork. And a guest came up to me and asked for a fork. And I'm like, for what? You know, it's sandwiches. And then he just stood there and I'm like, I'll go get you a fork. I probably now will never get hired again. I mean, I'm very nice. I
Right.
just was curious. For what?
Well, and you say you'll never get hired again, but I think the reason why I get worked up about so much stuff is because we see the back end. We have seen how much time the couple and their family has put into all of these details.
Yes.
And when guests come in and are rude about it, I'm like a mama bear on the day of the wedding with my couples. And I'm like, don't mess with that. Like that
Right.
stresses them out. If they see you doing it, like stop it.
Even the fork, we had multiple conversations about whether we had a dinner fork. So it's also just like we're trying to think through everybody's needs. And, yeah, we do make decisions where you're like, well, it saves a little bit of money here.
Right.
With sandwiches, who uses a fork to eat a burger? If that guy's listening, I really want to know. Like how do you use a fork and not a knife?
Right.
Anyways, that's why I asked. For what?
Right. It just came out, right?
It did.
Came
It
out.
did. It did.
Okay. What is your last pet peeve?
My last pet peeve that I'm sharing today, because obviously there's a big long list of them, it's going to be type A bridesmaids.
Okay.
I love me a type A bride or groom. They're actually my ideal client, and I get a lot of them. And I call them that, and I will then joke during planning, like, you got an A. Of course, you got an A, my type A clients. But it really annoys me when we have a type A bridesmaid. Just because we've already planned everything. It's planned. It's done.
Right.
And the one place I will say that I'm the boss is when we're like prepping in the morning and getting everybody moving.
Sure.
And after years of it's like they kind of want to find problems. I swear they want to find problems.
Yes, they do. They want to find problems so that they can be the one to find the solution and feel helpful. That is my theory on that. Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very performative. It's
yes,
like
it is. It's performative. Hey, they think I should have to act a certain way because I am a bridesmaid. And it's like, just go sit down and
just
drink
have
your
fun.
Mimosa and have fun and smile. That is your job. Yes.
Yes. Like, hey, I found this problem. What are we going to do? And I hear that and I'm like, can you go sit down? There's no problem. I run the rehearsal. So if most of my couples don't get married in churches, they usually have a friend or family member marry them, which means I run the rehearsals. And I have a whole spiel now. And one of the things that I say is anything that happens tomorrow that you think might be a problem isn't. And come to me or my assistant, not bride or groom.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And actually at the last rehearsal I did, when I said that, everybody looked at the bride's mom, who I loved, and she was like, okay, I won't do it. I won't, like she got the joke. Again, all I can do is speak for Megan and myself. Mm-hmm. When we're putting a timeline together, when we're planning this weekend, we're doing it so that you, the bridesmaid, the groomsman, the mom, the dad, whoever you are, can just enjoy. You just do what you're there to do. And as a bridesmaid, you're there to look pretty. You're there to have some laughs in the morning, reminisce, remember whens.
Bring a good energy into the space in the morning, right?
Yes.
Not a nervous energy, not an anxious energy.
Yep.
Just a nice, calm energy.
Yeah. So they drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I totally agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We could also do a whole episode on that.
Yeah. We're going to joke that you want to do weddings without guests. The joke I'm going to make is I don't want wedding parties anymore. None. I just want the bride and the groom. want them to get ready together. I just want everything to be chill. So that's it.
I'm surprised that we were able to narrow this down to just 3 each. I'm proud of us for doing that.
Well, it's because you told me to do that before we recorded this.
Because we couldn't record for 5 hours.
Yeah.
People would be like, man, these women are just crabby.
Yeah, they really don't like what they do. Well,
and
it's
the funny
fine.
thing is we do. We love this. It's just,
yeah.
I think in any profession, right? There's pet peeves in any profession.
Everyone knows too. That's why whenever anybody finds out what Megan and I do, there's always questions where they want the juice.
Yeah.
No, the tea. They want the tea.
They
the
want
juice.
The tea.
They want the juice. What the hell?
Isn't that like a steroid?
I think so. Yeah. So, all right. How are we wrapping this up?
I don't know.
Well, this was fun to do because, well, I only listen to one podcast and rarely. But one of the things I love that they do is whenever they have a guest on, they'll ask a certain question to every guest.
Yep, the same question. Yep.
The same question. And so because I don't know any other podcasts, when we talked about doing this, I'm like, when we have guests, I want to ask a question. And the pet peeve question, I think, is great, right?
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to have a guest on fairly soon. We're not sure if it will be the next episode or the one after, but it will be fairly soon. And so you're going to be able to hear more pet peeves from a whole bunch of different people to make sure that you are not that person. So I guess that's it for this week, right?
Yeah, and we have no idea what we're talking about next week, which is exciting for all of us. So join us.
Join us next time and we'll all be surprised.
Yes. Join us next week because who knows what the hell we're going to talk about. All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us again this week. If you have a wedding or travel-related story of your own that you would like us to share in a future episode, send us an email to plannerspassport@gmail.com.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Planners Passport and follow all of our travel and wedding businesses, including We Roam Solo, Dare to Dream Travel, and Dare to Dream Weddings. And please, if you enjoy our show, remember to rate, review, and subscribe from wherever you are listening to this podcast.